Good morning, everyone. Yes, so welcome to an amazing day. Yes, so with me, RESTRUCTURING ELISE. It is Monday, and we are excited to once again discuss the requirement for our generation to allow themselves to be in that we call in our season restructuring, right? Restructuring that we've mentioned. We started with a discussion on last Monday, and we are excited to say that the year is young, yes, and with the youngness of our year, we are required to have ourselves not in a pace that is going to exhaust us in our season. We are required to have ourselves on a pace that is not going to have us overtired, over depressed, and in a state that we are out of control, right? With a young year, we remind ourselves of the birth of the year in this season. And when you are in the birth of the young year, you remind yourself that with the year that is young, you have that was 2022, right? And in 2022, we had a busy year. Our generation had a busy year. There is Russia-Ukraine war. There is lots of requirement for our generation to abide to that is going to be protective for everyone in our generation. And with saying that, I want to remind us today that we had our opportunity to really learn that our generation's requirement in season is to have that is going to be fine, not only for you but for someone else, not only with you but also with someone else. It is that we have learned that we were all on a pace to want to be somewhere, right? We were all working on our careers. We were all building our communities. We were all restructuring our households, our families. Yes, but we are required to remind ourselves that with restructuring and with the HR fact of the office environment, that our generation are required to abide with and to really allow themselves to not oppress someone else, but to learn the requirement of that is a change in our office environment. That would be the change in the financial state, in the state of our generation in general. It is that we have learned that our generation are not going to be aggressive to that has aggressed us in our season, but we are required to allow ourselves to be in that is the protective environment, but that someone else do not manipulate where you find yourself at in your season. And with saying that, I want to remind ourselves of our discussion that we had last week with our HR2023 office restructuring and RESTRUCTURING ELISE. Yes, it is our generation's requirement to abide to the restructuring of what we call the office, but our generation in general. I have mentioned last week that the office in our discussion are not only going to focus to the business environment of the office, but to the business that is our every household supply, our every household provisions that are made, our every requirement to ensure that our countries, that our communities of people, that our societies of people are not deprived of what is also meant for them in this season. We have learned that our generation had an agreement, right? And with the agreement, there was 50% of people that had a financial income and 50% of our generation that had no financial income. And what's saying that we in this season where we are going to require of our leaders to really allow themselves to abide to that is their leadership role when they lead in our generation. It is that we are not going to abuse the situation that we already and that has already been abused to where we are at in our season, but we are required to remind ourselves that we are going to require our leaders to therefore cooperate and work with our people, in our communities, within our countries, within where they find themselves at, with different lifestyle choices that they have made. But the requirement is that the requirement for our community leaders and for our leaders internationally is to listen to the requirement that our people in our communities, in our countries have concerning the state of our generation in general. With mentioning it, I want to discuss the war, the poverty state, and the oppression of our generation in where we are at and with what we are required to do. I have learned that our generation had a voice in season that was a change in season that they call a new world order, right? And we've learned that some of the countries have already implemented the process of a new world order. We have learned that other countries have allowed themselves to listen to what it is that is happening around them, rather than just allowing themselves to be part of something that might sometimes be depressing for someone else, or that might sometimes be oppressive for someone else, right? And it is that our generation had to learn to decide to include everyone in what is meant for everyone, right? And what's saying include everyone, we have learned the different states of our countries, right, has caused our generation to be in war. We have learned that the war state of our countries has allowed our countries to understand that there was that a generation has agreed upon looking unto a certain part of the generation and disregarding another part of our generation. And 2022, 2023 is that requirement for our generation to therefore decide for themselves that the new world order that came into place, that affect a lot of organizations, a lot of church groups, a lot of communities of people that have really worked along with this process for years. The process was implemented, I think, between 2022 and this year. And while they are in implementation of the process, I believe that the process is cooperating and working along with that. There is the 50% of the community of our people in our generation in poverty, and 50% that goes on financially well. And therefore, we have decided to really allow ourselves to listen to what was the requirement that was called the New World Order. What is it that the leaders really wanted to do and wanted to implement when they decided upon the New World Order? I have learned that in my community, Paul, there's been, yes, I've mentioned the businesses last week, yes, but British American Tobacco that has been involved in the implementations, yes, and I've mentioned that I've worked in Auckland, New Zealand, in Whakarangaroa in 2022, and I've learned that they have been part of implementation of this New World Order, right? I was going through a list of names when I was working at Whakarangaroa last year, and I've learned that a lot of our community people, Pau community people, was on this list as supervisors in the community, and the list of people were church people, churches in Pau community. And I was a little bit depressed about it, and I was a little bit oppressive, and I really allowed myself to understand what we were busy with, because it was a COVID-19 season, and the business was working with COVID-19 issues, right? And I have learned that the community where I'm from, and the communication between South Africa, between New Zealand, between Europe, between America, has involved a lot of people, has involved a lot of issues, has involved leaders that decided that they want to side with who they want to side with. They want to financially support who they want to financially support, based on the church that you go to, based on not necessarily your lifestyle choices, but based on employment, where you're employed at. And a lot of our generation and a lot of people in our generation felt oppressed with that. And I have learned that I therefore will require to allow myself to understand what is happening around me, because I traveled to South Africa in 2020, and no one said anything, right? South Africa's situation was changed, and everyone was a bit different to me, and I was looking around at what is happening. Half of the year, my electricity went off in South Africa, and I was like, what is happening? And no one came to fix the electricity box, and no one came to support me in where I was at, and certain people looked at me as if they were busy with something, right? And I have learned that there was a lot of discussion concerning RESTRUCTURING+RIBEA, right? There was a lot of discussion that I did not know that had my name. And right, I've mentioned before, yes, Malvina Lachikan, I'm going to mention their name because we grew up in a church, PPK, South Africa together. And their names were on this list in Whakarangaroa, right? And Malvina directly had clothing on of RESTRUCTURING ELISE that was not my clothing, but that was similar to what I wear. That was the same colors, the same season. That was that wanted to maybe say something to me, or maybe was in the season where they were involved in what was busy happening in our generation. And because he is a family friend of our household, I was stepping away. I've sent an email and I said, I realize there's something happening. I do not know what it is. I learned that your business is Aisha, and I've learned that when I speak, then you post something on your business, and I blocked Malvina out of my account, and I allowed myself to learn what is happening around our generation, rather than allowing myself to now have to be oppressed because of an agreement or because of a church rule that now only looks after a certain part of our generation. And I have not had time to discuss this with our community yet, because I am really allowing myself to learn on Al Jazeera the communications that is happening internationally in our countries concerning this matter, and who of our countries are really continuing with this whilst they learn that there is Russia-Ukraine war, that Putin moved to South Africa with China to explain that this is where we are at. Any communications concerning this new world order we are not agreeing with as a generation, and we really require some people to really respect that with where we are at in our season, right? And I have learned that while we are going through this challenge, it is important that we are not going to sit in a corner and allow ourselves to be oppressed, right? And I had to mention the names of people because the people are familiar with where they are at and with how they communicated, maybe concerning RESTRUCTURING, maybe not concerning RESTRUCTURING. What I have learned is that our generation would have to make a decision, right? If there was really corruption happening in our generation that included people, then I think that politically, legislatively, they would have to abide to that. That is going to be protective to someone else, right? People would have to be imprisoned if they have to be imprisoned. And I have to say it the way that it is, because I really do not agree with the state and with the requirement of our generation to want to go and decide to have war in a country rather than dealing with the matter at hand, right? Rather than dealing with what is necessary and what is required of our countries. I've learned that the Chinese government, yes, have requested South Africa to really stop the communication so that they can really manage the situation, because they are trying to really manage what is happening in Russia, Ukraine, that they might have been part, everyone in different countries might have been part, but our generation have an opportunity to decide upon ourselves, right? Either it's gonna have us be in the argument, or we're gonna decide that those people who really want to continue with what they call a new world order would really have to make sure that this is what they do, and they therefore do it amongst themselves, and every other person in our generation really finds themselves employed, really finds themselves having what they are required to have with where they are at in our generation. We are really gonna not have to argue about the matter. We are not gonna have to send people into war, and then our protective services, our defense force, they are going through so much arguments that leaders can manage in-house, and leaders can manage in a way that it is meant to be managed, right? I have mentioned all of the communications on my social pages, and I really require Facebook and Instagram that they have been involved also in communications concerning RESTRUCTURING ELISE. And when they learn that there's matters that causes our generation to be in argument, they really work with the police and with the protective services, with the defense force, to really ad hoc communications that is going to oppress our generation further, with having them be in argument when they can really resolve the issue in a way that it is protective for everyone, in a way that we do not have to now send every country into war based on what one country requires, right? We do not have to argue about a matter that generations of families came through this matter. We do not have to go into an environment where countries are abused and countries are feeling scared and countries are fearful because some people want to hold on to that they want to deprive others of. They want to have other people in poverty, and they only want to have other people right where they are required to be at in our season. And therefore, we are required to not be silent. And I would really request of people that our social media pages, our Instagram page, our Facebook pages, our YouTube pages, all of these information pages are not there to only have information shared around and to have a jolly time. No, it is so that we can control our countries, so that we can manage our countries. It is a restructuring happening in our generation. And when there's things happening that is depriving of someone else or it's corruptive, then report it. And when we report it, we require our defense force, our police, our protective services to really investigate these issues, so that we do not have to be in an argument when it was not meant to be an argument, because there are people in prison that really is in prison only for being on drugs, but there's so much serious things happening in our generation, right? Then we ask ourselves, why are some people then in prison in this season? Why were they then sent to prison when the matter could have been dealt with in a way that they would be, going through rehabilitation or what they were required to go through, rather than imprisonment, and rather than being deprived of where they are required to be at in this season? And therefore, I want our leaders, I want our social media page owners, business owners, because they constantly cooperate with this corruption, and I cannot agree with that. And I really admire those who really didn't close my social pages based on my education, because I cannot agree that our generation continues to argue with one another, and some people want some people to be in war while everyone can be fine in our generation, while everyone can cooperate and cannot address one another when there are corruption, deal with the corruption issues, rather than wanting our generation in a war season that is really not meant for our generation. I believe that when you have built your city up in a way that our generation has built up our countries, then you can clearly see that a war season is not meant for our generation. And therefore, we are in a season that we are going to require our United Nations leaders, our leaders that really react upon these matters, to really step up, to really provide us information on television, and to really allow our countries to be managed in a way that is going to be protective for every individual that is in our countries, rather than trying to deprive, rather than trying to manipulate more, rather than trying to abuse more. I always say everyone has been corrupt, so none of them can really go and blame the other, but we are going to need them to lead us in that is going to be that firm standpoint, that is going to be that they do not disregard the requirement to protect humanity, in that is an argument, and that is sometimes only what someone wants, where there's a complete generation of people that are requiring our leaders to be in that, to have them in that is the protective environment for every one of us. I really know that I always have a lot to say, and I always seem a bit, sometimes when I really feel that a situation is not that difficult to manage, right? A process is not that difficult to get right in our season. I know that a lot of people feel that they have been involved in all of these discussions and in all of these meetings, especially the United Nations team members, the political leaders, right? And I really think that they feel that they might be imprisoned based on the fact that they have been involved, but they do not have to fear the fact that the people who would manage the matter would not manage it in a way to abuse our leaders, that they would manage it in a way that would even be protective for the political leaders who were involved in something that was maybe a requirement for our generation to do. Maybe someone else forced it upon someone, but we are not going to want to continue in the argument on a daily basis. We're going to want our Instagram and our Facebook pages to really cooperate with our people in our countries. And when they learn that people are required to be in argument and to stir war in countries, then we require them to really react upon that, that we have investigative officers working, cooperating with Facebook, cooperating with Instagram, cooperating with YouTube videos, videos, cooperating with our social pages so that we can manage our generation in a way that I feel our generation are ready to be managed in a proper way. I do not feel that we are a generation that don't know what we are doing, that don't know where we are in our season, that is dumb or that is uneducated. Some of the people in our generation have not been educated, but the way that we speak is that there is the ever truth of where we find ourselves at, the ever honesty of where we are at in our seasons. It is that we cannot say that someone else cannot be employed, because my mama Anna used to say, yes, that's it, that cannot read and write, but it does not mean that she can't be employed somewhere, right? And it is that our generation would have to look at the gangsterism issues on the streets. There's a lot of things that we can do. There's a lot of people that are ready to really work along with really bettering and restructuring our generation once again to where it's required to be at. We're really gonna request for our leaders to not aggress our countries. If they feel oppressed, if someone are really abusing them, there's the social media. We really had communication in-house that we learned that there's really recordings in my house that people are listening into my opinions sometimes. And the people that are listening in are really implementing my opinions, because I constantly put Al Jazeera on, and they're constantly working on these matters. But what we require of our social media monitoring people that really monitor the system is to really ensure that when our people are required to be educated properly, that accounts are not hacked out, that accounts that are really educating for that is gonna be protective for our generations, educating and really making our country's people aware to not be arguing with one another, because there's nothing to argue about, but to allow ourselves to once again be one generation, because we are one generation. And really some people really feel that there is fear with where they are at and with what is happening in our countries. But when they are really paranoid about the situation, I want them to understand that the situation is not gonna be a situation out of control. And that's why I want our leaders to really manage it in a way that no one feels that the situation is gonna be out of control and now someone would have to vote and be on someone's side, right? Because we do not want our generation on one side or on the other side. We want to understand, we want our generation to learn that our generation is for everyone, and everyone is meant to be where they are required to be. And if you apply for a job, you would get the honest opinion of your recruitment officer to recruit you or to decide to recruit someone else, rather than based on a system that is oppressive and argumentative in our generation. Therefore, our request of the team of the New World Order leaders, I really understand the process that you want to implement, but I really want you all to understand where we are at in our season and the argument concerning what you all are trying to implement. And therefore, when you all discuss the matter of this New World Order, I want you all to really make time to listen to what is it that you all really want to implement. And when you all implement it, make sure that businesses in the countries that really sometimes are owned by people who are maybe only part of the New World Order team, of the team of billionaires in our generation, that they therefore also make sure that other people are also employed in businesses, rather than now functioning with that mindset that their businesses is now only for the New World Order team in our generation. Our argument has been a lot in our generation, yes, and I've had a lot to say. But we are in a season where we can educate properly. We can educate on our social pages. I've heard that America and Sina had an argument concerning TikTok, and I was a bit aggressed in my house, and I really want to mention this to both America and Sina, that the argument is that America feels that the information might be really exploited out somewhere, right? And that people that were on TikTok might be exploited. Yes, there was a lot of RESTRUCTURING ELISE talks and a lot of laughs and a lot of jokes about it. But what I want our people to understand that in a season like this, when y'all have arguments like this, y'all make it sometimes personal, and sometimes it can stir other arguments, right? And therefore, I want y'all to understand that every social media page, I've educated the PAL community team in 2022 and in 2021, that any social media page is a page where everyone has the personal right to learn and to accept that this is a page where personal information are going to be shared. Your location isn't there, where you are at isn't there, what you post can go anywhere in the world. It is international social pages. So the argument that they have is that what I would require for countries to do is when there's new apps that they implement in our countries, then they really legislatively apply processes and educate in-house in our countries our young children to really be aware and to really learn of what is happening and what can happen concerning social media pages, rather than making it an argument because social media like Facebook has been there all these years and information were on there. Instagram has been there all these years, information has been on there. YouTube has been there all these years, information, personal information has been on there. And there's a lot of issues that we want to manage, like human abduction, all of these issues that they can manage in a way that they do not have to argue, but they would need to legislatively in-house implement processes, and then externally they can then manage the processes in a way that it is not going to be an argument on a news channel or an argument on a television screen that everyone now decides to vote either for America or either for China because of a TikTok that was implemented. I've really also mentioned in I have not mentioned on my social page, but in-house, that TikTok was really where parents took their children onto. Parents had their children exploited with nudity photos, with swords on, with open standing and open leg singing. So everyone knew exactly what they were doing. I really have not allowed myself to go on there because when I learned, I've just logged in and then I learned that this is happening and I immediately logged out of TikTok. I think it was in 2020 when I was in South Africa and someone told me about the app TikTok. And then I've learned that every parent was on there with their children, and every children was wearing a sword skirt, and everyone was dancing open legs and all of these things, the nudity, sexual exploitation of everyone. And now after everyone has done that, they now decide to argue about it. Parents who was aware and were aware of what they were doing, and therefore I really require them to really in-house discuss how legislatively on a social media, how legislatively to educate your people, to protect your countries in-house. So concerning social media, and if there's any education that had not happened yet, then start to educate, start to learn to protect your countries in-house, because that's what political leaders are there for. That's what parliamentary leaders are there for, so that they can legislatively abide to that. That is going to be protective for their countries and for their people. And therefore, I really want everyone who's in argument concerning the matter to deal with the matter in a way that is professional, that is non-abusive to the other, and that does not require our generation to once again vote for either one country or the other country, because we are all working together. They have worked together many years, China and America years, many years they have worked together, and we do not require anyone to argue about issues that is going to address our generation, because we're excited to work with both of them. They have really designed a lot in the celebrity house, televisions, all the implementations. We're excited with both of them, and therefore I do not require anyone to go and vote on all of these issues or to go and stir on arguments concerning discussions that countries can have in meetings and that can be managed in a way that is constructive and that is protective for everyone in our countries. What I also want to add with that is that our businesses, yes, I've mentioned last week, that when it comes to our businesses, we are going to require the business owners that internationally works with businesses that maybe be in disagreement would also not go on social media to go and have votings and hashtags concerning business owners or concerning businesses from certain countries. We really require, I've mentioned it last week, and I want everyone to really listen to what I mean with when I say that we require business owners to protect the business that they work for and to therefore protect the employees that are employed at businesses, because there's lots of discussions in our generation, and because there's lots of discussions, no business owner internationally are going to be deprived of their right for their business to be protected while they might be in disagreement, because we do not want international business owners to still send messages to countries and to still come and argue with their business with regards to their businesses that they have owned for many years in certain countries. So therefore, business owners need to educate employees that might be aware that the businesses is international business and is maybe owned by that international person. And when that comes in, when the situation becomes personal, then people who really sometimes find themselves hashtagging information concerning certain people are really gonna have to be educated to protect their employment right. Legislatively, the business owner has the right to be protected also, even though they are in a personal disagreement with where they are at in their season. Their businesses are required to be protected, and therefore business owners who finds and business managers specifically who finds businesses are in disagreement, so therefore not try and manipulate business owners more with wanting to stir arguments more internationally. We want business managers to educate staff, because many staff, it seems like they are not aware that it's an international business, but all our staff in this season need to be educated to not go and exploit these business owners, to not go and have people vote against the businesses, because many times when there were issues like salary issues or personal issues in business, people would find in situations like this a way to really sometimes argue with the business owners. And therefore also with legislatively, what countries needs to do with regards to businesses that are in-house owned, countries needs to now allow themselves to listen to how to manage in-house businesses in a way that is gonna be protective also for the countries, so that everyone on every level are educated to that is gonna be non-abusive to our generation in general. And also therefore I also want to mention legislatively that when countries are in argument or in disagreement, then I want business owners and I want our bank owners that financially manages the finances of business owners who might be international business owners, but they might find themselves in disagreement in our generation. Then our bank and our financial departments in such circumstances needs to protect the businesses legislatively immediately when they learn that businesses are in disagreement and it might be an international business owner. That is the right of every bank, that the business owner banks would. And if this is not legislation yet, I want every legislative requirement with regards to business owners to really be updated in according to what is going to be protective for our generation, so that some people might not go and abuse a business while the business is going through an international argument with someone else or international disagreement with someone else. So therefore the banks that businesses bank with, it is their responsibility for the businesses to legislatively find out, are all the businesses okay, rather than having people travel to countries to go and check on the businesses, right? And really is everyone's businesses being managed in a way that the finances are protected and are not abused in the countries, and until the disagreement really are in a matter that would have everyone communicate again in that there is gonna be effective communication for everyone. And therefore, for all our people in our countries, yes, do not abuse, because you might learn that someone's business might be this or that, especially South Africa. Yes, South Africa, do not abuse business owners, and we're gonna want our financial, yes, supporters, yes, and managers to manage these finances and to report to these business owners based on what they are required to have in according to the information on their business, on their businesses, and on the financial state of their businesses. Banks, yes, lawyers, yes, manage the situation in South Africa in a way that no one would have to travel to South Africa to come and order their businesses to come, and we not gonna have any other international auditor step in. We want banks and we want people to cooperate with the legislative requirement, yes, of that is gonna not have our generation in any further disagreement about what is happening and with where we are required to be at. And once we are really having really control of all of these issues, and no one is abusing no one, and everyone has learned to now cooperate and work along in this process, then we would really implement with where we are at with the poverty countries and with where we require the poverty countries to be at. We want no one else to ad hoc working in the poverty countries, but we want no one else to argue outside of the poverty countries when they learn that the situation in the world is already in an argumentative state that requires people to want to react on wars, right? When you are in a state that is abusive, there is reporting lines, there is international United Nations team members in every country, and we want the United Nations team members to really allow themselves to learn, to listen to what is the response going to be with required to what people's requirements are, so that no one goes paranoid about the situation and no one tries to abuse the situation any further than what is really already happening in our countries. That is it for what we wanted to say today. And we're really going to want our countries to really learn that every country is going to be restructured in a way that it's going to include the community members. And we need the data that is going to be uploaded onto computers that is really that is going to be that everyone in our society would be well provided for, right? And we're going to need accurate data and accurate updating, and that is going to be required to really fix our international countries. And we're therefore going to have to learn to have our United Nations team listen to what functions countries require to be implemented when it comes to all those information systems that are required to be updated accurately, so that feeding schemes and people that funds international countries would find themselves having to effectively provide, so that the argument does not stir further in our generation. Because we have learned that there are really people that are really ready to provide for countries that are in poverty state and for countries that really requires them to assist during this season. That is it for what we wanted to say for today with our discussion here. So we're going to continue next Monday at 12:30 with the same discussion on HR 2023 business restructuring and RESTRUCTURING ELISE. My personal opinion, my guidance, my education. And if you can share the video, then do so. Have an amazing day further.